I've always thought that googly eyes are the most hilarious thing ever. I wanted to prank one of my friends by sticking googly eyes over everything in his apartment, but I regret that I never actually got to do that. However, something happened in my house somewhat similar a little while ago. Someone I had, watching my daughter, had bought a whole pack of self-adhesive googly eyes. So these have been all over the house. In fact, today, the inspiration for this video came from finding two in my mailbox. And I had been cleaning, and I remember finding a couple and picking them up off the floor, but I have no idea how they got in the mailbox. I must have dropped them there when I was getting the mail, had them in my hand. I have no idea. Anyway, mystery of mysteries. The googly eye is as profound of a symbol and is as profound of a pointer as the Eye of Providence. So the Eye of Providence is something that we respect. It's a very old symbol. It's sort of esoteric. It's sort of mysterious. It's on our money, and God knows that's important. But the googly eye is a better pointer because we don't take it so seriously, and it's the actual taking seriously which is clouding the awareness. So because we're aware that the googly eye is not actually seen, it's a very funny imposter. It's funny. It's an eye, but it's not actually seen. But what's sort of profound is that these aren't actually seen either. So it's a funny thing to mistake your self-awareness for what you're aware of. I'm aware of this googly eye. I'm not seeing through this googly eye. In the same way, you are aware of your body. You are aware of what is sensed. But that isn't it. It's a very, very funny imposter. So, a couple of months ago, I had this dishwasher break down. So I had a new one delivered. And the same day, I had this other, gas tank delivery. I had to have these gas tanks set. And I wasn't going to be there, so my dad did me a really big favor, and he came to the house and he installed the dishwasher and talked to the guy and showed him where to put the tanks and everything. So when I come back, he is telling me about everything that's happened, and he has a googly eye, one of these that my daughter was playing with and lost all over the floors, and it's stuck to his bald head. And he has done me this really big favor, and I don't want to break the news to him that he just had a conversation with a stranger and had a googly eye stuck to his head the entire time. So I'm trying not to laugh, but the whole thing was just this hilarious story. I just kept remembering it. It was just so funny. And eventually my daughter comes up and she just rips it off his head. She goes, "What is this?" And he thought it was funny. He wasn't that offended. But I was like, how am I going to break it to him? Sometimes that's what teaching feels like, because sometimes we get these wrong assumptions, and that's really the stickiness. These things are self-adhesive. That's really the stickiness of the eye. It's so funny that I and I sound the same, the separate I, the individual. It's the stickiness of the eye. It's this is an embarrassing mistake. How did I not know I had a googly eye stuck to my head? It really is very funny. And it's none of if you were to God forbid, experience losing an eye or something like that, the horror of that, or the the hilarity of a googly eye, or like how funny a fake eye, like that becomes funny, although it's not because somebody lost an eye at the same time, or like the mystery of like the Eye of Providence. All of these reactions and emotions are again the same thing as the googly eye. They're an interpretation, they're not the interpretator, they're not the awareness itself. So I read this amazing description today, or an amazing pointer, and I'll give credit to where it came from in the description because I don't remember right now. But they're saying when you wake up in the morning, there's the world, and there's, through the senses, through sight and feeling and everything else, the senses don't discriminate between body and world, which is a profound thing to understand. But if you, which we cannot, in the present moment, there is no sense. So it's by thinking that we can do this sort of like discrimination and singling out of each sense. So seeing, from the perspective of seeing, everything is an object or everything is a sight. From the perspective of hearing, everything is a sound. You can't hear seeing. So they don't actually correspond, and yet they are the false. It proves that each other is false. So we are prior to, we are always prior to. And so when we mistake ourselves for being the seen, being what awareness is aware of, it's as hilarious as thinking that I'm actually seen out of this googly eye. So one of the best ways to describe what you actually are is to negate or deny what you are not. Because if awareness is totally open, like imagine the center of your eye is a dark hole that lets the light in. So the point of it is no point at all. There's no center. So if we can only say what there is not, that's what awareness is. It's not a thing itself. And so when we call it awareness, it's as funny as the googly eye. We're in the same situation again. So certain teachings like Neo-Advaita, to directly say this, they negate what everything is. They negate the I. But really there is no Neo-Advaita, and this is why it starts to become funny and ridiculous, is that it can go on and on forever. So this pointer came to me today, and it was like an aha moment for me, because I've explored this analogy, but I'd never thought about it in this way before. So if you think of the I as like a character, and then you think of the awareness as like the author that writes the character. So the character doesn't actually exist. That's a really good pointer. But if you're an author, you know everything about the character, and you also create everything about the character. So you know that the character's hair color, you know their background, you know their desires and their dislikes. You know everything about them. You focus on it, you create it. And as you're writing the story, you're writing it for the reader. But you never think about an individual reader. The reader is just this vague idea in your head. It's like who is going to be aware of this story? Who's going to read this and not knowing what's coming next? And yet in reality, it's very funny to realize that the character does not exist, but the reader is real. So there's another analogy for you. And to take it further, non-duality, they are not two. The character is not separate from the reader, is not separate from the author, is not. It's not.